Good evening and welcome to PM Express. My name is Martha Krensel Aqua, and today we are talking budget. In my hands, I have a 26-page document, which is the budget review presented to Parliament by Minister for Finance, Seth Terkper. He has done this a couple of times. This time around, we are looking at what new he presented, the review, what he's seeking from Parliament, approval he's seeking from Parliament, and what this means to us as Ghanaians. I have people in the studio who are capable of talking about this, and I am sure by the time we are done, this whole myth about budgets and finance and all that will be demystified for you to understand, and for me to take something home and see how this whole thing affects me. My name again is Martha Krensel Aqua, and I'm doing this today with the head of budget at Ministry of Finance, who is Patrick Nomo. You're welcome to PM Express. And I also have someone who feels disadvantaged by this whole move. And here is Ibrahim Musa. He's the head of policy and partnership at Water Aid Ghana. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
I hope we'll have a pleasant conversation and demystify this whole thing. So let me start with Mr. Patrick Nomo. What is the mid-year budget review about in summary?
In summary, the mid-year review budget gives us an opportunity to update the people of Ghana through Parliament about how we have implemented a budget that was approved for us in November 2014. And also to indicate whether we are on course to achieve the same target that we set originally, or things have changed, and also provide us an opportunity to indicate whether some adjustments need to be made to the original target, and therefore provide the people of Ghana a clear view of what to expect towards the end of this year. If we determine that there's a need for adjustment, then we put that before Parliament during the mid-year review, and then they discuss it, debate it, and give the necessary approval. So in brief, that is what the mid-year review is about.
So in the mid-year review, you can make requests, you can make demands for funds, revenue, all that?
Yes. In the mid-year review, you can introduce new strategies to achieve the same targets that you set out to achieve, or to revise your strategies, introduce new initiatives, or revise the implementation strategies for some of the initiatives. But more importantly, if there's a need to ask for additional funding, so that we don't have the situation which we have had in the past, where you get to the end of the year, overspent your approvals, and then get to inform the people of Ghana after the event. Okay. So we are beginning to do the needful, which is to do a very thorough assessment midway and see whether we'll still be on target, or we need additional approvals to ensure that at the end of the year there are no surprises.
Okay, but in doing this, some have said that we are using that as an avenue to always ask for extra budgetary support. Okay. Is that what we are doing here?
No, to the contrary. If you look at the numbers very well, you realize that government has proposed to spend less than it has originally planned or obtained approval to spend. Government has planned to pay down its debt much more than we originally planned to pay. Okay. So on net basis, on aggregate basis, yes, we are making more payments, but those payments are not in spending. And that's an important distinction to make. The fact that you are making payments doesn't mean you are spending. Some payments go to consumption, while some payments also go to repay debts that you already owe. And this is the beauty of this particular mid-year budget. That in this mid-year budget, we are reducing the current year spending, and then using some of that savings plus additional resource inflows to pay down some of the borrowing that we had done in the past. So at the end of this year, we expect to have spent less in terms of expenditures, and then paid down on our debt, so that our debt stock at the end of this year will be less than it would have been without this mid-year review. Okay.
Ibrahim, are you impressed? All that he's saying is so nice, sounds good, but are you impressed? Did you listen?
Well, I listened to Honorable Seth Terkper, and I will say good evening to him and his hard-working staff at the Ministry of Finance, if he's listening to us. But to come to build on the point my colleague is making, to really say that from the civil society perspective, we seem to wonder whether the budget which was presented to Ghanaians in November 2015, for which we are reviewing this time, is actually transformative in nature.
Okay.
Because really, from January, when the appropriations were done and the government machinery started spending, we in civil society are just appraising and asking ourselves whether there's anything really transformational. My colleague mentioned two critical things which are pick, and for me, that's really the crux of the matter. Consumptive spending, yes, because, of course, civil servants and public servants must be paid. Another category of workers must be paid to keep body and soul together. Also, repayment of debts which have been contracted over the years. Yes, because we need to look credit worthy, to our, development partners and bilateral agencies from whom we took money. But apart from these two major areas of spending, to find out really whether actually government machinery, has actually helped.
What do you want to see in this budget to call it a transformational one, the 2015, the November 2014 budget?
Exactly, because if you look at the 2015 budget as a whole, Honorable Seth Tekpe presented a number of strategic areas of focus, for which he explained that the economy was going to be transformed. If you move away from the macroeconomic indicators, really there were other social service areas which government called essential services, which we thought that all put together was actually going to usher this country into a transformative era.
I didn't see that.
Up to this moment in time, July 21st today, spending in the social services area is still challenged. Education is battling. Water and sanitation, which really is a crux, of development, is suffering because the ministries and sector agencies are not getting money, to propel the development in water and sanitation. And you are witnesses to the sanitation challenges that we encountered when on July 3rd, on June 3rd, this country was plunged into the unfortunate, flooding, and many other, social, areas.
I saw some 50 million cedis for the management of the flood and fire disaster and aftermath. Is that not enough?
Highly inadequate. For instance, if you look at the sanitation challenges that this country is faced with now, this is just a tip. It cannot solve any problem. Sanitation challenges will range from construction of major drains. It will range from public health management aspect. You saw 2014, the cholera that hit this country. In 2015, we are still battling with remnants of cholera. You are seeing the education sector, some of the challenges that we are facing. You are seeing other, social safety net areas, the livelihood, empowerment against poverty and all that. All these are challenge areas that we think that really, if you wanted to call this budget a transformative budget, then we should be able to see how it can come from a political economic angle and not just pure macroeconomic angle.
Mr. Nomo.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's interesting. I'm enjoying the submission from my colleague, because all the areas he has highlighted are areas that we have made significant progress. If I start with the last one he mentioned about the LIP, the social intervention programs, this is 1 year that if you talk to the Minister for Gender, she will tell you that we've made all the releases, that needs to be made on LIP. In fact, when the IMF mission, in the IMF program, social intervention program are one of the key areas that they review. In fact, it's a structural benchmark. It's an area that if we default, we will have to go back to their board to seek an exemption. So we are very careful to ensure that social services are provided whilst we go through this fiscal consolidation program. The education sector, if you monitored carefully, you realize that unlike previous years where they said, we have not received money for capitation grant, we have not received. This year, we didn't hear that. Why? Because as part of the program, we have protected social spending. and making sure that resources go to the respective sectors to ensure that social services go, so that the very poor, the very deprived in our society.
Can you put a figure to that?
For LEAP alone, we have paid 24 million Ghana cedis already this year.
Okay.
We are on course to ensure that the full amount of 38 million that has been put in the budget is released to them. When it comes to the education sector, we have released over 60 million for social intervention programs alone. This excludes school under trees and all the developmental spending that we've made in the area of education. Okay. It includes their regular goods and services and their salaries and all that. On capitation grant, I mean, their social intervention programs in education alone, we have released over 60 million Ghana cedis. In the area of health, in addition to what is channeled through the National Health Insurance Authority that goes to, as they render services, I mean, we have released resources for them to, I mean, address the issues of public health that challenges. The general rule is that we don't have an infinite basket of resources. But we are making sure that this social intervention program, these areas that go to minimize the effect of poverty on our people, are addressed and addressed very well. In the area of disaster, the fund is not meant to address all the issues of disaster. That 50 million cannot construct all the drains that we need to, or desilt all the rivers that we need to desilt to ensure that there's free flow of water to avoid this. But these are strategic to address the immediate effect of the disaster that we have.
Exactly my point, because when I saw that on the point 33, I was asking myself, are we tackling the problem?
Yes, the problem is being tackled from the root cause, because like the Accra sewage system that has been a problem for these years, I mean, that is being addressed. Okay. The district assemblies are also spending money to ensure that
at that level.
You see, so it is not the central government port alone that is supposed to effect the necessary changes to, I mean, bring relief to our people. So what government is doing is engaging at the appropriate levels of government, I mean, to ensure that they all play their part to ensure that these issues are addressed. We have spent a lot on development expenditure. I mean, in the mid-year review, that's when you start going on project by project to indicate that this road has done this,
you've done that.
Yeah, the main focus is to tell us where are we going to be at the end of the year. Okay. It's just some decisions that we need to take now to ensure that we get there. And then at the end of the year, we'll give a full account of what we do at the mid-year is to give an indication of what we call the policy initiatives that were included in the annual budget. Okay. What progress has been made at the mid-year. Are there some mid-term initiatives that we want to introduce to ensure that we remain on course? And that is what the mid-year review has sought to do. When it comes to the various ministries, departments, and agencies, this is the first year in which, when you talk to them, they will tell you that releases to them, I mean, making resources available to them has improved significantly. Really? Because unlike in the past, where they went 3 months, 6 months without having received any release from Ministry of Finance, every ministry, every department, every agency got a release for the first quarter and the second quarter.
Is that the impression you are getting?
Well, that is very interesting to be coming from my colleague, because if you want to be very practical, from 2014 up to the end of December,
the whole of 2014?
Yeah, up to the end of December, almost all the 216 metropolitan municipal and district assemblies had a carryover of common fund into 2015. At least 2/4 of the common fund was not paid. And as we speak, we are in July. I wonder if the arrears, what we were told is that the arrears were not clear, but first quarter was released to the MMDA, which means that significant arrears are still outstanding. But you see, for the 2015 budget review, he has mentioned some sectors which clearly is indicating that government has done well in releasing money to them for the first quarter of 2015. But if we come to other sectors that I am very close with, in the water and sanitation sector, ministries of water resources, works and housing, ministries of local government, you can talk about the ongoing national sanitation, program which government is doing, but which you say maybe they have released money to the Ministry of Local Government to continue with the policy initiative of National Environmental Sanitation Day. But really, there are agencies like the Environmental Sanitation Health Directorate under the Ministry of Local Government, which need resources to promote government community-led total sanitation.
You want to see that in the budget?
We want to see the releases. They were put in the 2015 budget, but the releases are not going to these agencies.
Okay.
To be able to promote the community-led total sanitation, which is supposed to ensure that communities do not openly defecate in the open. That can be able to bring cholera and epidemic in the nation. Yeah. We want to see releases to agencies like Community Water and Sanitation Agency, Ghana Water Company. That will promote pro-poor water and sanitation agenda. We want to see more releases to the health sector.
Yeah.
Mr. Nomo, do you track?
Yeah. Yes, we track. I mean, I should have brought copies of the tracking reports to you, to show you. You see, what is very important is for us to look at a little bit. We may not have time to do the full budget cycle, but to look at the budget cycle and the process. Ministries, we of course work with the National Development Planning Framework, policy framework. We also look at sector, plans, so that in preparing the budget, it's not just Ministry of Finance sitting down and allocating resources to the lowest level.
You get them involved.
We get the National Development Plan. We come to sectors. Sectors have their sector development plans. And then as we make budgetary allocations to the various sectors, the sectors then determine their priorities. Then they make, so that if we look at an agency under Ministry of Water Resources, Works and Housing, Ministry of Finance will not be making allocations to the lowest level.
Exactly.
We can question, we can interrogate, we can ask for feedback, but the sector minister has his priorities and he determines. Yes. So the challenge we face is to make sure that when you have a budget, we make a release of that budget, or what we call a budget allotment to you for the quarter. We have done that for the first quarter and the second quarter, the first half of the year. It is the minister responsible who then determines that, looking at my priorities and what I've signed up with the president to do, I want to focus more of my resources in this area or in this area. The beauty of what we are beginning to do this year is that we give you the first quarter, we allow you to do the allocations. The second quarter follows. But to give you your resources for the third quarter, we ask you for your report of the first quarter.
Okay.
What have you been able to do with the first quarter? We insist on getting that report. We have a discussion with you, determine whether what you are doing is in line with the National Development Agenda that you have signed up to. Then the third quarter follows. So you realize that there has been a big shift from the way we implement the budget in previous years, where we see that there aren't much resources, so every small department or agency comes directly to Ministry of Finance, follow up their releases, and the releases are made to them directly. We have moved away from that. Now we give the ministry their budget allotment for the quarter. The ministry sits down, looks at their priorities within the sector, and determines that water is the topmost priority. So let me put it into
because
water.
You trust they know what they want to do.
Well, everybody has signed up to the National Development Planning Framework. Everybody has signed up to a sector development plan. You see, everybody has signed up to a budget, a program-based budget, which tells you the outputs you are supposed to deliver for this year, the targets that you are supposed to achieve, and so on and so forth. So we have all agreed on a common plan. So I give you the resource, you go and work for the first quarter, you work for the second quarter, so that we avoid a situation where you say, I've not received any money for the first half, so I've not delivered anything. We have given you money for the first half. You deliver your outputs. You sit down, we look at what you are.
Is it working?
Exactly. I think it's working.
Exactly.
Let me say it's working.
And that's precisely the point I was coming to, because he's making allusion to the Ghana Shared Growth and Development Agenda, which is led by the National Development Planning Commission.
Yes.
And the Ghana Shared Growth and Development Agenda has got development pillars and priorities.
Yes.
Ideally, the picture he's painting should be the case that all sectoral plans feed into the Ghana Shared Growth and Development Agenda, which is 2014-2017. And every ministry, department, and agency feed into that based on their sectoral allocation. But you see, I want us to practicalize this discussion, because we are all in this country. From January until somewhere the end of June, we were in this country when the economy was hit. You recall that even after the budget appropriation was done and they started implementation, the Minister for Finance again rushed to Parliament and requested for some amendments. Yes. We didn't call that review. No. Because the budget and government revenue estimates were prepared in November based on oil revenue of $99 per barrel. Okay. And by February, March, when the crude oil prices came down to almost hovering around 50, we had this very big revenue shortfall. Exactly. At that time also, if we want to be factual, apart from the falling cocoa and gold prices, which came almost at the time oil prices fell, this country also was hit with non-budgetary support by our development partners because the economy had come to a point where it was suffocating and it needed help. And so our major development partners like the EU, like the World Bank, said, look, something needed to be done to restore confidence, to restore policy credibility in the system. So between January, February, March, April, really, I'll be surprised to hear that we're releasing financial resources to ministries and agencies because there was really no money.
That's what I said. Look,
we're only good at paying salaries to keep Ghanaian workers going.
Yeah, but really, I just want to be sure that in releasing, we ensure that it is used for what it is meant for.
No, let me clarify this. You see, we have made some gains as a country. Yeah. That sometimes, because of our history, we find it difficult to accept the changes that have taken place. Yes. And we'll come to that, but the CD appreciation, for instance, is one that everyone says, oh, what happened? What changed? Forgetting that for about 2 years consistently, we have been putting in place measures aimed at stabilizing this economy. Okay. When the effects are beginning to show, we shouldn't be surprised. Number one,
especially when we know we are working towards it.
In the midst of the cut, ask all ministries, departments, and agencies. We didn't reduce what we call the government of Ghana portion of their budget. So if you had 100 million or 100,000 as government of Ghana budget for your ministry, it is left intact. Even in this media review, we have left that intact. Okay. In spite of all the challenges that have been taking place.
Mr. Nomo, let me have you hold there, and let's take a short break and come back, and Mr. Nomo will continue his submission. Welcome back. We're on PM Express. And before we took the break, Mr. Patrick Nomo was trying to explain to Ibrahim Musa how they are tracking to make sure the money they put in the sectors work. So I'll allow him to continue, and then we go on from there.
Thank you, Martha. As I was explaining, we have moved away from the piecemeal release of resources to ministries to a structured way that enables the ministries also to plan. Okay. I mean, every minister wants to know how much resources are available to me this quarter. How much can I do next quarter? I mean, so that they can do this in a systematic way that helps them to achieve the objectives that have been set. So what we have done is that starting from this year, we release your budget allotment. The budget allotment is the portion of your annual budget that you can use in a quarter. So we release that to you at the beginning of the quarter. So you'll be able to stay within the commitment limit. We are implementing what we call commitment control. So we can commit only to the extent of budget resources being available. We are trying to move away from what we did in the past of what we can call cash rationing, where depending on the resources that are available, you share, and then some people don't get a fair portion.
In some quarters.
In some quarters. And some, in fact, at the end of the year, may have gotten just a little, I mean, barely nothing to deliver the output. What we are doing is that based on the program for the quarter, we give you your budget allotment. Then it is a challenge of the Ministry of Finance to work the system to make sure that there is cash at the time when invoices are accrued. So that the fact that we don't have cash today doesn't mean you can't carry out your activities. But we give you your budget, you operate it, And because of that, for the first quarter, every government ministry or commission or agency got their budget allotment, and they went ahead to implement it. We've done that for the second quarter as well. For the third quarter, we expect them to submit reports on the first quarter before you get the third quarter. Okay. Before you get the fourth quarter, you would have submitted reports on the second quarter. I mean, then we keep moving in that. That
looks like a good plan.
It is good, it is effective, and it also brings efficiency because everybody knows that, I mean, even during the budget implementation, you have to account for the resources that you have, because we are not doing the old activity-based budget where you say that I've carried out this activity. No, the question of what you achieved with the resource also comes in, and that is what we have. And if you talk to the ministries, everybody has received a request from us. Those who have not submitted has received follow-up. That look, when we gave you the money in the first quarter, we told you that you have to report. Where is the report for the first quarter? And that system is working. So I will be surprised if any ministry, I will not talk about the agencies and the small units under the ministry, because the minister has authority to determine how the resources go within the ministry. At this stage, we give the ministers that leverage. But if any ministry says that, oh, for the first half of the year, first quarter, second quarter, we have not received any release, I mean, I'll be surprised.
We need to verify
we
that.
need to. You can. Fortunately, Joy FM goes everywhere. You can check with the ministries. Of course, the right people in the ministries. The other thing that I want to clarify is about the District Assembly's Common Fund.
Yes,
you see,
the outstanding.
Over the years, as a country, we have had a system where our commitment control systems were not weak. Sorry, were weak. Because we didn't have these budget allotment systems and an effective commitment control. So people went out, ordered goods and services, sometimes even verbally, and it became obligations on government. We have moved away from that. So under our current program, we have a structured program to clear all arrears. When it comes to the statutory funds, we've not hidden it. In the budget, it's very clear that we owe statutory funds. We came into this year with 2 quarters of statutory funds owed to the District Assembly's Common Fund and then the GET Fund. What we have said is that we can't pay all the 2 quarters this year, but we do not want to accumulate any new arrears. Okay. So for the current year, we'll pay regularly and make sure we don't accumulate, we don't end.
But there may be outstanding ones from 2014.
But for the 6 months that are outstanding, we'll pay 3 months in this year, in addition to what is due for this year. And the other 3 months we'll pay in 2016. Yeah, okay. So that is a structured plan to clear the arrears and stay on course.
So have you released the 3 months?
Yes, we have released the 3 months for GET Fund and then the District Assembly's Common Fund. What is left is the other 3 months, which they know that we are not paying that in this year. It will be paid the following year.
Is it accumulating interest?
Interesting question. We'll discuss that also later. Yeah, but the important thing that we have introduced is also some level of improved or increased transparency. These are not things that are hidden from them, that they don't know why it has not been paid. They know that of what is owed them, 3 months will be paid this year, the other 3 months will be paid the following year. So we have embarked on this structured program. I mean, if you like, a deliberate program to make sure that we achieve certain results by the end of this year and the subsequent year.
Let's move on. You're asking for a supplementary estimate of about 800 million
yes.
Ghana cedis.
Yes.
What is that going to do?
Good. As I explained to you earlier on, we have reduced expenditures, but we also decided that we'll pay off $500 million. That will come to about 1.5 billion cedis of the 2017 Euro bond. So ideally, we should be asking for more than 1.5 billion. But we are asking for only 859 million. Why? Because we have made savings in current year spending. That will add to, that will help us reduce the burden of the deficit or of the appropriation. I don't know whether you get that mathematics. We have reduced
towards paying that, so you don't need to take the whole money. Exactly. Is that what it means?
We have reduced expenditures by over 700 million. So we need about 800 million to add to it to pay off 500. That's 1.5 billion that is outstanding as debt. On our books. That's a simple mathematics.
This estimate is just going to service
debt.
debt.
Basically, it's going to pay off debt that we owe. The reason why it's important to pay off that debt now is that when market conditions are right, that is when you borrow to pay off debt. If you wait until that debt becomes due, and everybody knows that you must necessarily pay off this debt, and you don't have the resources, the person who is lending to you will say, okay, I'll lend to you at whatever rate, because you are compelled to do it.
Ibrahim is fidgeting.
Yeah, so this is a strategic move.
Wait.
This is a strategic move
to pay off
ensure
the
that
debt at this time.
you don't wait. You owe, let's say, you owe 1.5 billion cedis. You don't wait until that day when you have to pay to say that, okay.
When you have other means of paying.
Yes. You rather
the time is right.
And that is part of the strategy that is helping our economy to bounce back.
Starting from
2013, we started paying off loans that would otherwise have hit us in one tranche. I mean,
it sounds good, as you say, but is it the right thing to do?
And,
is it the only option available?
Yeah, for me, let me commend the Minister of Finance. He's mentioned the commitment control regime that they have instituted as part of the changes in the financial management processes, and I really will commend them, because when you institute commitment control regime, it enhances accountability, it also enhances transparency, and very importantly, it brings to the core the resource-orientedness of the whole process. And for me, that is really commendable. I really hope that it moves from the national level and cascade to the local government level, where we have district, municipal and metropolitan
There's so much work to do at that level.
Absolutely operating, because that is really critical, because they have also now moved into a regime we call composite budgeting, where also much as they are now focusing on activity-based budgeting, the need for commitment control regime is very important there. Touching on the issue of expenditure rationalization against public debt management, which in fact this mid-year budget review has really come to underscore. And we see that encapsulated in the review of macroeconomic indicators, the major one being from 3.9% GDP growth rate to 3.5. Let me say this, that we need to really look at the policy trust and the strategies around which this is built. Because we have also mentioned that from where we are coming from as a country, from 2000 to 2008, thereabout, we had an average GDP growth rate of around 7%. But this growth rate that we're touting around, it was just jobless growth.
Is that what you choose to call it? It
was jobless growth because, from that period also, we witnessed, the building up of youth unemployment, which is staring us in the face now. Today, we are still doing expenditure rationalization. At what cost? And this borrowing that we are now paying this huge amount of money, nobody is saying that, borrowing is bad. And that is where the argument about public, debt stock comes in. It is about where you invested the amount you borrowed. Where the funds invested in areas that could propel economic growth and ensure that all the necessary areas of economic growth actually had the share of the monies borrowed, said that it could bring the multiplier effect.
So when we are paying the debt, we know we actually invested it in something profitable.
If we invested to just show our consumption, if we invested and not, if we borrowed to show our consumption, if our borrowing did not actually get invested in critical social service areas, in critical, job opportunity areas for the teeming youth, which can also even, ensure that you have, you broaden the tax net and not allowing just 300 people to be paying tax
all the time.
All the time.
They are burdened.
Really, the economy will continue to have it continue to heat up.
So you will want to know where the money is borrowed.
Absolutely.
I invested
because,
Mr. Nomo.
Because critical areas of the economy are still struggling.
Okay. Did the money go into the critical areas he's mentioning?
Yes. You see, when it comes to debt, like my colleague rightly said, you need to know what the money borrowed is being used for. It's very, very crucial. But it goes beyond that. Even when you are using it for the right person, the right project, the right reasons, whatever you are using it for, you need to be able to classify it. Is it a commercial project? Is it a project that should pay for itself? Is it a social project, a project that will improve the welfare, the well-being of our people, and therefore yield returns? So those are the things that we are doing, we are beginning to do now. That when we are borrowing, unlike previously when we borrow and we say national debt, it just stands there as national debt. Now when we borrow, the first thing that we do is to ensure that that borrowing is financing a project that has been properly evaluated. Okay. That is attributed to a particular state agency, either a ministry, department, or agency. And then we make an assessment whether this is a commercial project, a self-financing project, or just a social, intervention, a social project. Where we realize that this is a commercial project, then we put in mechanism for that project to pay for itself. Okay. So we sign what is in the budget as on-lending agreement. So if we are paying for VRA to increase its capacity to produce power, then we sign an on-lending agreement with VRA that we have borrowed this money, we are giving it to you, use it to produce power, sell it, and pay back. So that loan is paying for itself. If we are doing our gas projects, our various power plants, you sign on-lending agreements, let the projects pay for itself. If you are borrowing to do health facilities, we don't run hospitals as commercial projects. Then we know that this money is going to the Ministry of Health. It's a social project. It will not pay by itself. But government then will have to set up what we call a sinking fund. Okay. You see, that's why we have sinking fund in the budget. So that annually we put money aside to pay that loan. Whilst we are doing that, we attribute that sinking fund and the repayment plan to Ministry of Health, so that we can tell how much we are investing in Ministry of Health. So that when we analyze the budget, we don't look at just what Ministry of Health is consuming for the current year and say, oh, the spending in health is very small, the spending in education is very small. We look at how much we have borrowed, paid on the use for their projects, and how much we are setting aside to redeem that amount of money that we have borrowed for those social projects. Okay. So the sinking fund agenda serves two purposes. One, it helps us to set money aside to pay back the loan. Two, it helps us to know how much resources we are pumping into the sectors so that we can hold the sectors accountable. In the absence of that, we just borrow, spend on social projects, borrow, spend on commercial projects. There's no accountability arrangement, and therefore we all cry that the national debt is too high. It's too high.
Especially when we can't tell where
the money is. And then at the same vein, we also ask, but we need roads. We look at our hospital, look at our, sometimes we contradict ourselves. What we need as Ministry of Finance or as managers...
roads doesn't mean we expect the debt to go high.
Exactly. So that is why as Ministry of Finance, as government, what we do is to set up the appropriate mechanisms, appropriate tools that enables us to provide the services that are required by the people of Ghana, and also make arrangements to pay back the loans in an effective way that either brings returns from the investment itself to pay, or we set up what we would have consumed aside to pay back that loan. So yes, I agree with my colleague that the debt is an issue, but I can assure you that we are putting in measures to ensure that. Yeah, we
I like that I can assure you, Mr. Nomo.
On
that note, we'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk more about the sinking funds and expenditure controls on PM Express. Welcome. We are still on PM Express, and I'm here with Mr. Patrick Nomo and then Ibrahim Musa, and we are talking the budget. The crux of the matter is there is supposed to be some discipline in our spending to make sure that when we get the money, it goes to where it ought to, and then we get the feedback, the impact we expect to get at the end of the day. So let's talk about measures we are taking to sustain the new payroll policy.
Okay.
What measures are we adopting this time around?
Yeah, for the payroll, the key point to make about payroll is that for a long time as a country, we have assumed that the payroll feeds itself. I mean, so people just have to get onto the payroll, they have to be paid. When they get off, they have to come back on and be paid. What we have identified over the past few years is that there is a human resource management aspect of the payroll which had been downplayed for a long time. And that is where we want to effect the biggest change. I mean, if you work at multimedia, you don't even get to know accounts. You know your personnel manager, you know your human resource manager.
Exactly.
The human resource manager who engages you, works with you, you fill all your forms. You may not even see accounts until your salary comes. But with the public sector, as soon as somebody is given an appointment letter, so we'll go to Accountant General and follow up your pay. There is a human resource management aspect of the public sector which needs to be strengthened.
Okay.
So we are putting in place a human resource management information system. The Public Services Commission, the head of civil service, working with the services, are putting in place a human resource management information systems that will ensure that before you are even given an appointment letter, proper budgeting has been done, proper assessment of the staff establishment has been done.
When is this going to start?
The project has started. We are hoping that by the end of this year, I mean, in fact, there are 5 pilots. There are 9 pilots. We are hoping that by the end of this year, 5 of them will be up and running.
Okay.
And then next year, the rest will come on board. And what this system will do is to ensure that the human resource aspect of the public service human resource management is properly managed, so that your details, your personal profile, your date of employment, age, and all those things are fed into a good database.
So we can be paying to living beings and not ghost names?
Exactly. So when it comes back to the payroll, whilst waiting for this system, we have done a lot of work to ensure that the payroll itself has a very high level of integrity. So we have checked the data, the database of people. We have introduced what we call an electronic pay voucher system, so that before you are paid on a monthly basis, just like you are paid at Joy FM, where your head of department confirms that you are actually working, or your human resource manager confirms that you are actually working before you are paid. The payroll is run, a report is sent to the head of department. The head of department gives it to the various departments. They confirm that Patrick Nomo is working, Mr. Musa Ibrahim is working, Martha is working, and that you should be paid for this month before you are paid. In the past, it was assumed that salary is so delicate that if you don't pay people for 1 month, hey, hell will break loose. We have gone past that stage now, thanks to this new system. So we have had months, and in fact, even this month, June, last month, there are people who called me, relations. It happened, 2 of them happened to be relations, who come and say, Patrick, we were not paid this month. I said, what happened? He said, oh, other departments have been paid, but we have not been paid. When I checked, their head of department didn't validate them. Okay. So you were not paid.
So at the end of every month, there will be validation.
There's validation before you are paid. It happened to somebody you know.
Okay. It's widespread then, because we got calls in the newsroom as well.
So you see, we have moved away from the situation where we are doing, as for salaries, it's constant. Whether you were working or you were not working, whether your boss saw you or didn't see you during the month, you'll be paid. So now every month, somebody will have to say that, yes, pay. And the important thing there is that that person who says that people should be paid takes responsibility. Okay. If you said X should be paid and X was not working and you are found out, the next stage is we have put in auditors to go around and test some of this on a test basis. So if you validated 100 people for June, auditors come to you in August, check whether in June, this particular 100 people were there and working. They submit a report, and then some that were found to have misbehaved have actually been sent to
Will they be prosecuted?
Some have been sent to the courts. Some have actually been jailed.
All right.
They follow up, and then action is taken after the audit reports have been done. We are not ending there. There are other data integrity issues on the payroll that the Control Accountant General is working on. You can't have Martha working. Her account is at Ghana Commercial Bank, but she has no bank account number. So if people were given the notice, names were taken off, that was regularized. Some people were able to produce their bank account numbers, others didn't produce their bank account numbers by the due date, they are taken off.
Okay.
So the important thing that has happened, the good thing that has happened, that we have broken the myth that once you're on the payroll, forever you must be paid. No.
When you are not
now,
validated,
if
you will not
for
be
any
paid.
reason something is wrong, you go off, let your head of department sign that you are there, and it doesn't end with your head of department. The Auditor General has been given the mandate to confirm that the person is actually due for a pay before you are put back there. And the president has set up a committee.
We have limited time to go anyway, but we have someone on the line, Charles, to join the conversation. Charles, hello. Go ahead and make your submission. Hello, Charles. Hello.
Hello.
Charles, go ahead. You're on PM Express.
Hello.
Hello, Charles. Can you hear me?
Hello.
All right. Charles doesn't seem to hear me. But Ibrahim, let's talk about the expenditure controls.
Yeah.
Are you satisfied with what was proposed?
Yes, I'm satisfied. Only that to the extent that it does not actually cripple the pro-poor sectors is what I'm concerned with, because we shouldn't overemphasize expenditure rationalization at the expense of promoting the bridging of inequalities.
Okay.
Because as we know, the National Democratic Congress government also prides itself as a social democratic government.
Yeah.
And being a social democratic, party and government, bridging inequalities is very important.
Okay.
We are talking about income inequalities. To what extent can that gap be bridged? Ghana is suddenly widening income inequality, gap.
But let's quantify
between the rich.
Let's quantify it.
Exactly.
How much are we going to get from this expenditure controls? Can we put a figure to it? How much we are going to get at the end of the day? Because you are putting controls in place to estimate that, okay, at the end, if I'm able to block all these loopholes, I'm going to get 10 pesos, 20 pesos. How much do we...
What you get from expenditure control is, one, you avoid, creating arrears or creating unbudgeted expenditure.
Yeah. Okay.
And you can't value that. It could, if without the expenditure controls, you could be up to anything.
And then also maybe the corrupt practices and all that will be, planned.
Yeah.
For me, those are accountability and transparency measures. We don't have a problem with that because that should be done and that must be done.
That must be done.
But
let's get Francis and come back to you. Hello, Francis. Hello. Okay, so
that should be done and that must be done because when that is done, it gives us credibility as a country. It gives our economic management credibility. But where we have problem with, expenditure rationalization is where you deliberately will cut down public expenditure in critical areas that will bridge inequalities.
Okay.
For instance, we have ongoing government, pro-poor programs like, free school bus for children, whose parents cannot pay, free school uniform, sandals, and then also these meals that, is provided to school children in rural areas, but also most importantly, the water programs that are given to rural communities, which are
You're actually wrapping up, so it's important you brought it up.
Which are very necessary, to ensure that economic activities are done in rural areas without water. But most importantly, let me also, recommend to Ministry of Finance to really consider investing in sanitation as a very important area. Because many a time when we talk about investing in sanitation, not just investing in sanitation to promote public health, that is very important.
But to create jobs.
But also to create jobs. Because as we speak now, there are a number of job opportunities that when Ministry of Finance is able to work with Ministry of Local Government and other agencies, can really see how we turn our unfortunate poor sanitation status by creating jobs for the youth, by putting them in groups in rural areas to be able to construct toilet materials that can really be given to rural communities to construct toilet, and that can really save government a lot.
That will save government a lot. Your final words,
yes,
Mr.
I want to end by asking that all our people help to implement government policy in a way that will make all of us benefit from the reform agendas.
Did you introduce new taxes?
We didn't introduce new taxes.
But you intend to?
No, that's the beauty of this media review. We have not introduced any new taxes. We just stay with the resources that we have. We are aiming at making more effective and efficient use of these resources.
Is there new tax on petroleum?
There's no new tax on petroleum.
Okay.
So what we need is for our colleagues in the MDs and MMDs who are doing a lot. In fact, let me also commend them for their understanding and cooperation in implementing these new measures. We believe that if we continue on this path that we have started,
we'll achieve our targets.
And then all of us will be better off.
And I'm sure the budget and everything will be as beautiful as you have always been
Not just
saying.
beautiful, but it will bring the desired benefit, the
that is the
value.
beauty of it, like you said. Thank you very much, Mr. Patrick Nomo of the Ministry of Finance and Ibrahim Musa of Water Aid. It's been nice coming your way with this edition of PM Express Talking Budget. My name is Martha Krenso Akwa. Thank you for watching.